Welcome to an evening of literary critiques and questions by Sean Pratt. Homework assignment for Miss Minter. Review questions for The Catcher in the Rye. And now, introducing our guest speaker and literature analyst for Miss Minter's first period class, Sean Pratt. One second, please. Two things. First of all, Miss Minter, you may be wondering why I'm videotaping these answers. It's a simple question, and for that there's a simple answer. I was absent on Friday when the homework was first passed out, and I went up to Mr. Boyer and I said, on Monday arrived, and I said, well, does she really want us to answer all 80 questions? Write them out? And he goes, no, she wants you to videotape them. Now the whole class heard this, and so I took this as meaning directly that he wanted me to videotape the answers. So I prepared my answers, and now we're going to relay them onto the videotape, and I hope that no harm will be taken. This is sort of a way to answer these questions, a way that I feel that takes more energy than writing them down, but we'll take it from here, Miss Minter, and I hope that you are not upset by the way I'm doing this. I just want you to accept it, okay? Okay. We'll start off with first question, Catcher in the Rye review questions, chapter 1 and 2. Who is DB and how does Holden feel about him? DB is his brother who lives in California, and Holden likes him, and Holden feels that he's got good qualities, he's an excellent writer, but Holden is disgusted with the fact that he has given his writing potential up to be a Hollywood writer. He calls him a gigolo for that, as if he's selling himself short. And so DB, in other words, does not really respect the fact that he is a Hollywood writer. Why does Holden feel he's disappearing every time he crosses the road? That's because he doesn't want to leave his life behind him. He thinks that he's growing older, and he sees how every time he he leaves one thing to go on to another, he's worried that perhaps by doing this, by going from one place to another, that he will be leaving a part of him behind, and he wants to stay the same. He's worried about going into the real world because he thinks that they're all a bunch of, as he says, phonies. The third question is, why does Holden feel as he does about life not being a game? And it's because he's not used to applying himself. He does not want to apply himself. Number 4 is, people never notice anything. Why does Holden say this? Because he thinks everyone's phony. He thinks that no matter how hard you try, people aren't going to notice it because they don't want to notice it. They're phony in that attitude. And the fifth question is, why does he question where the ducks go in the winter bother Holden so much? Continually throughout the whole book, he's always wondering about the question, the ducks. And on page, I think it's 83. No, let's see. It'd have to be 83. We'll turn to 83 really fast. No, it's on 81. It says, you ever passed Laguna Central Park, the what? And he goes on page 81, chapter 12. Well, the ducks that swim around it in the springtime and all? What happens to them when they go in the wintertime by any chance? The ducks, do you know by any chance? Does someone come around in a truck or something and take them away? Or do they fly by themselves or go south or something? Holden's possessed with this desire because the ducks, like him, he's consumed with nature, but he wants to know what he should do when the problems arise. Like the ducks, he's always flying away when a problem arises. And he can also relate himself to the ducks. 6. How does Holden initially feel about Professor Spencer? Holden likes Professor Spencer. He thinks that he's a well-taught man. He likes teaching. He likes the way he teaches. But when Mr. Spencer goes off at him, it makes him feel really bad. Holden does not think that he's going to use history. Holden's got about all the history he wants. And he explains that, in his test. That's all he needs to know about the Egyptians as far as he's concerned. So he's upset with Mr. Spencer pushing his teaching. Okay, chapter 3 questions. First one is, what is Holden's attitude toward Ossenberger? Holden thinks he's a big phony. When Mr. Ossenberger, in the first part, starts going off about how, on page 16, there was a guy named after this Ossenberger. They went to Pensy. He made a pot of dough in The Undertaker. And we turn to page 17. He goes, he talked to Jesus all the time. That even when he was driving, that killed me. I can just see this big phony Blankard shifting into first gear, asking Jesus to send him a few more stiffs. He feels that he's a phony because he preaches about God, but really he has no attitude toward God. Mr. Ossenberg, he's just saying that to try to get them, to do that. And he feels that the reason he's that way is because that's the way all adults are. They're phony. Ackley can easily be summed up as in a lot of ways. Ackley overall, he's neither ambitious nor generous. Brother Ackley is unfriendly and unsophisticated. He's upset with the fact that he is not accepted. So in turn, he feels rejected, and so he rejects everybody else that does not accept him. Holden tolerates him because Holden, sees part of him as like Ackley. Ackley is not away from, not involved in the real world, and neither is Holden. And so Holden, due to the fact that he cannot get better friends, in a sense, he messes with Ackley. Chapter 4, characterize Stradler and give examples to support what you say. Stradler is the big jock. He's the type of guy that all guys are kind of jealous of, yet he's phony. He has got all the American qualities, the American society that Holden despises. And even though he's energetic and athletical, and he's got masculine pride, and he worships materialism, and an immoral ethic, and that is one thing that Holden does not like. It says also, in the book, it talks about where Holden says, yes, Stradler is very good with the girls, and that's one thing that he's upset with. How and why does Jane Gallagher exchange Holden's relationship with Stradler? Holden's upset with the fact that he's met a girl that's not phony, a girl that he really likes, Jane Gallagher, inside, and the fact that Stradlater is the type of man that Holden is totally against dating a girl like Jean. That really upsets him to the point where he goes on a brink and he cannot accept it. Describe Holden's reaction to Allie's death. What does it tell you about Holden? Holden smashed his hands through the windows, when Allie died. And, a lot of significance has been portrayed toward the windows, that they're like portholes to being your real self. Like there's the windows where Jane Castle jumped out of. But, he died because of leukemia. He died of leukemia, and when Holden found this out, he smashed his fingers. And what we learn about this is that Holden really, really loved Allie. He loved him more than all of his brothers. We can see, though, that that's also the answer to number 2. Holden really loved him, and when he died, he smashed his hands through the windows. Chapter 6, number 1. What events led up to Holden's confrontation with Stradler? It was the fact that when he came in, he was bragging about having a good time with Jean. Why is Holden really upset with Stradlater? Because he cut on the mitt, and he cut on Jean. The fact that he was having such a good time, when he tried to get him to take back what he said about the mitt, and take back what he said about Jean or whatever, Stradler wouldn't, so he kept trying to fight him. How is your impression of Stradler affected? Number 3. How is your impression of Stradler affected by the point of view in which the story is told? Well, because, we could see, if it was told from Stradler's point, how Holden was provoking the fight. But Holden portrays it as if Stradler's protecting the fight, and that's due to the fact that he is the narrator of the story. Yeah. Chapter 7. Why does Holden feel so lonely after the fight? Because he's lying there all alone on the floor and he suffered defeat. And in vain he tried to defend, things that mean a lot to him, like the mitt and Jean, and he lost. Number 2, why does it make Holden feel so sad when someone gives him a gift? Because a gift is like a goodbye. It's like good luck. It's like, it means something that it really doesn't mean. It means like, we're hoping that you can do this. and it makes him feel inferior when he gets gifts. Why do you think Holden cries after he leaves Pensy? I think deep inside, even though he says he doesn't like it, he realizes how much he's going to miss it. It's part of his life. It's hard to lose something. It's hard to leave something behind you without crying. Chapter 8, number 1. Why does Holden and Mrs. Morrow each view... How do Holden and Mrs. Morrow... Okay, Holden views him as really a dork. He's an obnoxious guy that runs around slapping a towel at everyone's butt. And Miss Morrow sees him as a perfect saint, and Holden tries to build up this image so that Miss Morrow won't feel bad. Why does Holden tell Miss Morrow about Ernest? He tells him that he's a good guy, that he ran for class president, and that he turned it down, otherwise he would be. And the reason he tells her something that he does not really believe is because he's always, parents always expect something better of their kids, and he doesn't want to make Miss Morrow feel bad about, Ernest. So he builds up Ernest for Miss Morrow's sake. Chapter 9. How does Holden characterize Phoebe? Phoebe is a sweet young lady, sweet young girl. But he characterizes her as being very smart, very lovable, and she's straight-headed. She knows what's going on. Okay, number 2. Why does Holden say he doesn't understand about sex? The reason he says that is because he gets really excited, at times, and he doesn't know how to flow into it. He says that he, like when he hired the prostitute or with Sally, he can mess around, but he's never really gone that far. And I think he's nervous because it's like sex is an adult, reaction. It's an adult, physical, things that some children do. And I think when kids do it or teenagers do it, they take a step more toward adulthood. And I think that's one of the reasons he has trouble with it, is because he doesn't want to accept adulthood. Number 10. What else does Holden tell us about Phoebe? Tells us that, how he wants to buy that one record from Phoebe because she's a really sweet girl and he wants to have her. She's the one girl that'll help support him, that'll help him through this times. He wants to talk to her because she'll relieve the pain that he has inside. Why does Holden say he's different from other children in the family? Holden feels he's not as smart as them, but because of the book I've read, The Catch and the Rye, the fact that he can continually lie out of circumstances, that he makes up the things that he does, and the fact that he's an excellent writer shows that he is just as smart as all of them. He just does not want to face the reality of him being a smart person. I do not agree with the fact, that he is stupid, like it says, he says, but in the book it shows that through all the things that he does, that he has to be smart, that he has to have a brain on his head. Number 3. How does Holden characterize Bernice? Bernice is the really cute blonde girl. She's kind of cute that is at that bar that he goes to. And the thing is, he characterizes her as a dumb person who's looking for Mr. Good Time there. He doesn't want to date someone that's got a brain up here. And he finds it depressing that the girls are getting up early to go see the City Music Hall because he thinks, what's the big deal about it? They drive all the way out here, and he's not excited about it. And so the fact that they want to get up excited, be tourists to go to it, upsets him. Chapter 11, number 1. What else do we learn about Jane Gallagher in this chapter? Okay, this is where he goes on into about how he met her, how the crap in the yard and all that stuff, and how he played chess with her and how he defended her. He said, does your Ole ever try to make you give him the good time and stuff? He really wants to help her out. And we learn that she's a really sweet person inside. Why do you think Jane is the only person to whom Holden shows Allie's baseball mitt? I think because it's the only person that Holden really truly loves, outside his family. I think deep inside he loves this girl. This girl is like him. She is not a phony. He does not, perceive her to be a phony. That way, she can enjoy the things that they have in life. Describe Holden's relationship with Jane. They were best friends. They played checkers. They went and saw the movies. She was crying that one day, and he started kissing her. It shows the true love that they have, that Holden wants to have with her. And I think the fact that this girl means so much to him. It's like when you're in love with someone, just to hold hands means more than making out with another girl, because it's something you're doing with someone that you really care for. Okay, that was number 3 on chapter 11. Chapter 12, number 1. How does Horowitz, the cab driver, react when Holden? He thinks he's crazy. Like, what does it matter about the ducks? You know, no one can understand why Holden takes small things and makes big things out of them. Okay, number 2, how does Holden feel about Ernie, the piano player? He thinks that he's a joke. He plays really fast and he tries to get people's attention. He's phony because he wants people, instead of playing good music really fast, he tries to play to get applause of the audience. He plays for the audience's, attention, not like a good piano would play. And I think he feels that way because he's jealous of the fact that everyone wants to see Ernie and not him. And no, I do not think that this assessment is right. I don't think that Holden has the right to interpret that of Ernie. Where does Holden's father want Holden to go to college? He wants him to go to the same college that he went to. He wants him to go to Harvard. He wants him to go to Yale. He wants him to go to Yale. Holden doesn't like that because he doesn't think college is for him. He does not like college. He doesn't want to go to college and learn business or law like his parents. He wants to be the catcher in the rye. What does Holden feel about saying things like "glad to meet you"? Because he thinks it's phony. It's a phony saying. It's like, you come up and you meet someone, like where Holden's brother's girlfriend came up and met him, and she had that guy with him. He says, "Glad to meet you," but he really wasn't. It's something you just say. He hates general terms that have no real meaning. When people say something that they really don't mean, it upsets him. What does Holden mean when he says people are always running things for you? The fact that people, you have your own life, you set it out, and people want to change it. People always introduce something, and it always ruins what you've set on. That was number 5, and the last one's 4. Chapter 13, number 1. Why does Holden consider himself yellow? Because he would not go after those mitts, he said. He feels that he's chicken, and that if someone did found the mitts, he'd say, well, guys like, are you accusing me of it? And he'd say, well, no, I guess not. Just, how'd they get there? He's never really had the determination to go up front. He never had that determination to try to find that inner soul within inside him and overcome the problems that there are. Number 2, dose. Why do you think Holden tells us that he'll still be a virgin? I think because of the fact that he does not want to enter adulthood through sex. Basically that's what it is. It's the strongest commitment you can make with someone. Whether it's love or not, it's the farthest you can go to show what you'll do for someone. And no, I'm not surprised at all, because, Holden he's not acceptable. He does not want to accept society or reality. And so until he can, there's no way he'll really have sex. He'll always chicken out, as he does with the prostitute. He thinks that the fact that she doesn't even kiss him or get warmed up at all is disgusting. The fact that she's just there to put out. And that, he just finally says, forget it, I don't want to do it this way. That was number 3. Chapter 14, number 1. How does Holden feel about the disciples? He thinks that they were always messing up Jesus' life. Because he says, look, they got him in trouble, they kept making mistakes, Jesus kept having to correct them. And it wasn't until Jesus was dead that they actually, were of use. How does Holden feel about ministers? He thinks ministers are a joke too. He thinks that they just teach the gospel and that they're in there for themselves. They pray and they preach, and the money that they get back is theirs. They're not really for God, they're for themselves. Why does Holden give money to Maurice? Because Holden doesn't give the money to Maurice because he feels that it's not right. It's the principle of the matter that counts. And it isn't until Maurice takes the money that he loses it. That was number 3. Number 4, describe the scene Holden contemplates suicide. Why doesn't he do it? How is the scene symbolic? I think the fact he wants to commit suicide, it's at the end of chapter 14, and we'll turn to it. Now Holden is a very emotionally broke down child, and that's one thing that we see throughout the story. He's trying really hard to overcome the problems that he has. And, he goes into the bathroom, and he crawls back to the room. He stayed in the bathroom taking a bath, and they got into bed, I was tired, And he was thinking about 6 shots right through his fat, hairy belly, I throw my automatic down the elevator shaft, and I wipe off the finger, And, I think the reason is, he doesn't want to face reality, and so he thinks about suicide, but he's not at the level to make the final decision like that. And so, it's symbolic to show that we all go through depression and that we all think these things, but none of us really unless we're truly lost. I think it shows the symbolicness that he's losing parts of it, but yet deep inside he still maintains that, humanistic qualities that are necessary to sustain a natural and living life. Chapter 15, question 1. What character Death in Romeo and Juliet's bothers Holden? Romeo and Juliet, he thinks that the jokes, they led each others to their deaths. And, he thinks that, if they just stayed their own ways, nothing would have happened. It was not set up. They led to their own deaths. And another thing that, the person that bothers him is that, I can't remember his name, it's like Margiot or Margiot. It's the person, he's the only person throughout the story that doesn't cause his own death, like everyone else does. And this can be compared to James Castle. The fact that James Castle did not cause his own death. Everyone was constantly pushing him around, like the JC and Jesus Christ. Everyone was constantly pushing him around until eventually fate led its course, like it happened to James Castle. What does Holden say about money? Do you agree or why not? He thinks money is stupid. He wishes that they could not have it. Money is so materialistic, and he hates materialistic things of society. And that's, he realizes that it's necessary, but he does not like it. And I agree with him. Because without it, the economic equilibrium would be thrown off due to interstate commerce and this realistic distraction. And that would not, the global market would depreciate due to solicitators without the money that we have. Chapter 16, question 1. How does Holden contrast the rich and the poor? How does he feel about each? He feels that the rich and the poor, the rich are the high society people that live the lives that they pretend that they're happy and stuff. And he feels the poor people are really the true happy people of everyone. And then he likes some of the rich and some of the poor. He's really kind of contrast. Question number 2 of chapter 16. How does Holden feel about Sally? I think the reason he goes out there is because he wants some physical attraction. He needs some physical reaction with a girl. He needs someone that he can talk to, touch, to hold. He thinks she's a phony, but yet she's a cute girl that can satisfy his temporary needs. Question 3, why would, because when you read a play, question 3, why would Holden rather read a play than see one on stage? Because when you read a play, you can interpret it the way you want to interpret it. You can feel the lines, you can say the lines, you can express them with the ambiance, the necessary materials that make us enjoy literature, enjoy plays. And when someone else portrays their view of that line, it just blows it because your view may be different and you do not understand the play. And so more is learned, more is appreciated when read rather than seen by an author. Question 4. Why does Holden want to see Phoebe? Because he's got this desire. She's going to clear him up. He thinks that she is like a person that can help control his life, help bring it together. And she will be like the mix. And so that's why he wants to see Phoebe. What does Holden like best about the museum? He likes the Indians, the old Indian parts that he had to go through. He liked that part. Chapter 17. What mixed feelings does Holden have about Sally? He thinks that she's a really cute girl and likes her, but he also thinks that she's really phony because she'll say, oh, the lunts are so fun. Question 2. What does Sally and George talk? And how does Holden feel about the conversation? They talk about how he's going to college and how he's enjoying this and this and this. And, Holden doesn't like that because he sees himself as not probably going to college, and it makes him feel bad about it. And to see her talking to someone else makes him feel bad about it too. What does Holden tell Sally he hates about school? Chapter 17. Chapter 17 is really a breaking part of the story. It's where we can see the most about Holden, because he's with Sally, and he's getting to the point where he's starting to lose it. And let's see. I would have to say that one of the reasons he says that he doesn't want to go. Let's see, is because school is for stupid people. We hated each other's guts by the time and he feels that because school is the way it is, that they really don't teach you too much at school. The fact that school itself is just really lost. He hated he wanted to meet her, but he was afraid to really tell her that he felt sorry for her and that he did not want to continue to go there because school's a phony atmosphere to him. You ought to go to boys' school sometimes. Try it sometimes. It's full of phonies on page 131. And all you do is study and you learn enough to be smart enough to be able to buy a goddamn Cadillac someday. And you keep making believe you give damn if football team loses. And all you do is talk about girls, liquor, and sex all day. And even the guys that belong, if you have a little intelligence, And he goes, I agree, some do. But that's all I get out of it. See my point? That's exactly my point. I don't hardly get anything out of anything. I'm in bad shape. I'm in lousy shape. And he really confesses to her right there, which also leads to part of his downfall. Okay. Chapter 18. What observations does Holden make about the lady next to him? He makes the observation that the lady next to him is like, probably a cheap lady that does not, have the best of things, that she's, probably someone that, that comes in and is picky and is not really respectable. And he does not like her. Who's, chapter 18, question 2. Why does Holden say he'll be there in another war? Holden's interpretation of war itself is that there's no point to war. The opinion of war, is that, what is war? You got to ask yourself. War is where two people pretend that they're really mad at each other so that they can continue fighting. It hurts them, the fact that war, because he doesn't like to he doesn't like to see people die. And on page 140 it says, and but I really think he hated the army worse than the war. I'm practically a child at home, and I remember he used to come home on furlough and all, and all I did was lie in the bed practically. He hardly even came home in the living room later. Then we went overseas, and that if he'd shoot anybody, he wouldn't know which direction to shoot in. Let's see. But I do know that it'd drive me crazy if I had to be in the army and be one of a bunch of guys like Ackley, Stradler, and old Maurice all the time, marching with them and all. And, they kept telling me, I think that, for instance, I don't see how any of it could be a phony book, like, I'm sort of glad, he'd volunteer for it, I'm sort of glad that they got the atomic bomb invented. If there's another war, I'm going to sit right the hell on top of it. I volunteer for it because he wants to get the war over with. He does not like war itself. He thinks that the lady sitting next to him, goes back to question number 18, if I could please back up to that 18-1. He thinks that, she's scummy because of the fact that she cries at phony parts in the movie. Every time it gets phonier and phonier, she cries more and more, and he does not like that. He portrays her as a typical phony lady. Holden dislikes the Wicker Bar, because of the atmosphere there. The Wicker Bar, it says, as we get into it, it's where everyone that goes there are the classical phonies, the top phonies. Everyone, let's see, in one of those places that they're supposed to be very sophisticated and all, and the phonies are coming in the window. It's on page 141, chapter 19. Everyone there is phony, and that's why he doesn't like it. Lutz is the most intelligent person he's ever known. He's a really smart guy, and Holden really respects him, and he wants to talk to him because, he thinks that he can help him out, And, they talk about, the fact that he's that Holden is really kind of messed up and that he needs a psychoanalyst, and then they talk about that. And I think Holden wanted to see him not because he liked him, but just because he's going back at memories that he had before to see how they progressed, how they've changed. Chapter 20, verse 1. Chapter 20, question 1. What does Holden call Sally Hayes? Sally Hayes, he refers to her as being a really phony girl. Several times in the novel, the characters Lou, Sally, etc. in the novel have asked Holden to lower his voice when there is no indication from him that he's been yelling. Why does this happen? I think because of the fact that he's in the viewpoint, they're embarrassed at what he's saying. He may be talking to where other people can hear him, and they don't want him to hear. They don't want them to hear Holden speaking what he does, And because of that, Holden feels rejected. He's worried about really confessing. He confesses what he feels to these people. He opens himself up, and they don't want to hear it. And so they can't by saying, lower your voice. What does Holden feel about Sally when he hangs up the phone? He's really ticked off. He wanted to decorate the Christmas tree like this. Decorate it together. And the fact that he's drunk and he's losing it, and he wants to talk to her about his problems, and she just turns him away, and that really depresses him, and that's why he cries. He's taking Phoebe's record and he falls down. Question number, that's 4. Why is he crying? Okay. Question number 5. What happened to Phoebe's record? He bought the record at the store. It was really expensive, $5 back then. It was probably pretty expensive, and it was because it was a rare item. And he brought it and he tripped and he fell and it broke the record in 3 pieces. What does Holden imagine that his funeral will be like? He says everyone will be there crying, all the school stuff. It'll be really phony. How does Holden feel about Allie's burial place? To him, Allie's burial place is a holy place, and he remembers how he'd go there, and his parents would go there, and they'd look at it, and they'd try to see what was going on, and they'd try to help Holden, but really, Holden doesn't need the help. It nearly drove me crazy, all the visitors, that would... What Holden doesn't like is the fact that people are driving over where his brother lives. And he doesn't like how all the visitors go there. And it says on 156, that nearly drove me crazy. All the visitors could get in their cars and turn on their radios, After going and seeing someone respectable, someone that died, they'd get in their car and turn on the radios and go someplace nice for dinner. Everybody except Allie. I couldn't stand it. I know it's only his body and that in the cemetery, but his soul's in heaven, and all that crap, but I couldn't stand it anyway. I just wish he wasn't there. He does not like the fact that Allie died on him. He just likes the fact that people could pretend how sad they are, go visit him, and then go on with their lives. Question 7, how does Holden feel about it? Did we just answer that? We'll go on to chapter 21 then, getting near the end of the book. What is Phoebe like? Phoebe is a child that wants Holden to compete with life. She's disappointed in the fact that Holden is failing. In what way is she a child? The fact that she's still innocent, still, sweet and kind. But the fact in what way she's adult is that she sees that Holden is falling, that he needs help, and she tries to help him by, recommending certain things. And that through these recommendations we can see that she really does care for Holden in that capacity. What is Holden's response when Phoebe asks why he failed? She says the reason he failed is because, the classes were too hard and that he didn't want to apply himself. It says on page chapter 22. I could be wrong about that. Let's refer. Let's see. She says, I just passed English, and, he says, I'm sick of everybody asking me a million reasons why. It's one of the worst schools I ever went to. It's full of phonies. He blames it on the school, he blames it on the fact that he cannot, compete at that school. The atmosphere. And she gets really upset when she finds out that Holden is kicked out. What is Phoebe's reaction to Holden being kicked out of school? She gets really upset. She starts, going to him, like, Dad's going to get ticked off and Dad's going to beat you up and stuff. Okay, what is Holden's response to Phoebe asks why he failed? Because he relates to the fact that Pensy is a bad school. That it's not good one for him. It's not one that he likes. That's chapter 22, question 1, chapter 22, question 2. Who's James Castle? James Castle's a young man that really did not fit in with everybody at the old school he went to. And he jumps out a window. And Holden likes him, he felt sorry for him. He felt compassion for him. And this character, they say, if you look beyond the literary level, it's Jesus Christ, GC. The fact that persecution rose and he was sacrificed for the sins, of the people that were persecuting him, They realized what they had done wrong, and they've never been the same. Okay, chapter 22, question 3. What things are people does Holden say he likes? At the first question, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say I have no answer for. So I'm going to pass that up. Question 4. What is the only thing Holden would like to be? He wants to be a catcher in the rye. It says, if a body catch a body, it's really, it's on page 173, I know that, because I got the page memorized. It's if a body meet a body. He says, that's what I'd like to be. I keep picturing these little kids playing some games in a field of rye and all. Thousands of little kids, blink, 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 blink. I mean, if they're running and they don't look where they're going, I'd have to run out and catch them, and stop them. And, Holden, the significance of this is he wants the kids not to go into society. He doesn't want them to grow up or be adults. He wants to maintain them as children so they won't have to become phony like the other people. Mr. Antolini, how does Holden feel about him? Why? He really likes Mr. Antolini. Mr. Antolini helped DB out. Mr. Antolini helped him out, helped him progress in the fact that Mr. Antolini helped that character James Castle. Mr. Antolini is an important person in his life. And Phoebe helps Holden hide from his parents because Holden admits that he will come back and that Phoebe really truly loves Holden. I think Holden wishes his parents would catch him so that he'd have to face with reality, that he'd have to face up to his parents. He's nervous about it, but yet he knows that eventually it has to happen. Chapter 24, question 1. Why did Holden fail the oral expressions? He failed oral expressions because, he wouldn't go, the teacher had the, I can't remember what it was, but every time they did a run-on sentence, they'd have to start yelling or something. And Holden didn't like that. Holden didn't like the fact that they were being forced to start yelling and stuff, I think it was drift. I can find it for you in 1 second. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see, let's see, it's just the fact that, they continually yell. If a person started talking, they'd have to talk for 2 minutes directly on one comment. If they drifted off, they'd start having to yell, drift, drift, drift. They keep yelling this, and, Holden didn't like that. He didn't like, yelling. He didn't like, talk like that. So rather than, do it, he took the, he'd have the whole class yell at him as the technique that the teacher used. Question 2, chapter 24. Why does Holden have difficulty concentrating on Mr. Antolini? He is saying, because, he's really tired. He doesn't want to face up to what Mr. Antolini is saying to him. Why is the quote that Mr. Antolini gives Holden? Oh, chapter 24, Mr. Antolini tells him, it's right here. The mark of an immature man is that he wants to die nobly for a cause, while the mark of a mature man is he wants to live humbly for one. And the reason I think he says Mr. Antolini gives him that quote is, that he said, look, you want to die You're throwing your whole life away so you won't have to become an adult. But a smart man, a mature man, would admit the fact that he has to become one and humbly accept it. And that is what you should do. Holden wakes up with someone rubbing his head. He looks up and he sees Mr. Angeloni. And he thinks that this is happening because Mr. Angeloni is weird. He says, everyone seems to take me that way, you know. And, you know, maybe it's the fact that, you know, everyone's weird. But, you know, she's not sure. And so, you know, that kind of stuff happens to me about 20 times since I was a kid. I can't stand it. You know, maybe something inverted like that happens to me, you know, something weird. Maybe he's misinterpreting it. It's right here on page 193. And I think Holden Caulfield is suffering from adolescent synchronism deterioration. It's when adolescent does not want to maintain that chemical bond that he has, that, you know, not chemical bond, that, you know, emotional bond he has with his immaturity, that he does not want to become an adult. And he's suffering from that, and as a result, he's forcing, you know, imaginations into his mind. Chapter 25, we're almost done. Question 1, where does Holden spend the night? He spends it on a bench. And it depresses him because he's so hard and he spends the whole time trying to get a good spot. He just can't get slip. Why is Holden so confused about Mr. Antolini? Mr. Antolini is the first reason where Holden can't give an either-or answer on. In all his life, he's been able to say, well, it's either this or that, phony or not. And Mr. Antolini confuses him because maybe he was doing something for a different reason. Maybe it wasn't an either-or answer. And this starts one of the main things that leads to Holden's breakdown. Well, this has been a Sean Pratt Literary Classic review. Today's book was J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, as mysterious as the writer himself. And I've learned through The Catcher in the Rye that I myself am a phony. I relate to myself very much like Holden. I would like to be, you know, I don't want to grow up. And, you know, I blame everything else on society the way it is. And I think one of the things that we can do through society is that we can learn, like the suspenders, they can only force us so far before we have to fall back into the line of society. We can only pressure ourselves so far away before we snap back. It's Christmas season and it's now 11:45 p.m. and it's Thursday night and I gotta get some sleep. This has been a literary classic brought to you by your friends in the Museum of Natural History and the Museum of Art. We're hoping that you too can enjoy this literary classic, and it will be one that can be enjoyed forever. This was Sean Pratt speaking on J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye. Have a nice night.